Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on December 12th, 2025 at approximately 8 p.m. PST. Now, I've made it my life journey to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, I build myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the same tools I personally use in my own day-to-day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the same philosophies I guide virtually every decision I make by. With this in mind, I know these tools will work for you because they continue to work for me and have literally worked for thousands of other people over the years with varying degrees of success, depending on your own personal efforts. Now, today we are going to be looking at the Galactic Consortium's guidelines for colonization versus research. Okay. Now, before we get into that, I do want to tip my hat to Storm. He is our primary moderator and he hides in the back a lot of the time, making certain that that tech runs right, it runs correctly, and making sure that if we do get a problem child in here, they are removed before they become a problem. And rest assured, if you do find yourself outside and only able to listen, odds are you didn't look at the guidelines at the top of the chat or the ones scrolling across the bottom of the screen. But take a look at the guidelines, and you can certainly come in the following day. However, if this is a repeating performance, and I've got no control over this one, if it is a competing performance, Storm or one of the other moderators will remove you, and that'll be a permanent expulsion. Don't ask me how they do it. I'm still trying to figure out how this stream works. But that said, with that dealt with, I do want to say welcome aboard there, Mike. Mike Jones is in with the gold. Hopefully things are going well. And then we have Joanne B7. How you doing? Glad you could join us. You are in with the silver, Joanne. And there we have LA Moon coming in. She is our primary on-site, in-stream, in-chat room moderator. And she does two things. One, she does keep the conversation going and make certain that problem children are identified quickly. Okay. But she also, and this is way more important in my eyes, in a lot of ways, she keeps an eye on my health, so that I don't go dropping dead while I'm on air. Now, some of you have seen me go into a sugar spike or a crash, as well as other odds and ends. But it's literally LA that keeps an eye on to make sure that things are running. With that in mind, rest assured, LA, I had dinner just before I came here. At least, more to the point, it was really a snack, but it's still better than a kick in the head. And then we have, in with the bronze, we have Eternity Eternal. How you doing? Glad you could join us. And with honorable mention comes in Renee Andrews. And, hopefully things are going well on your end. We scroll down, and then we have, there is Woo Rider coming in right behind. How you doing, Woo? Glad you could join us. Now, let us get on with this. Now, there are two big things we have to realize. There are two reasons for off-worlders, especially members of the consortium, to settle and to set touchdown on any planet. But we'll settle for Earth. Okay. If they are looking at colonization, number one, they pick a planet that does not have a fully functional civilization. Now, I'll use the term fully functional because I don't know about you, but the way human civilization is going, I don't personally consider it fully functional. They, on the other hand, do. Okay, so when they're looking at colonizing, they will come in with defensive weapons, with protective gear, the whole 9 yards, to ensure that their people can settle in and survive, regardless of what's going on. But we got to remember, the first thing they do when they identify a planet worthy of colonization is they will do a lot of long-range and orbital scans to see what kind of terrain, what kind of animals they're dealing with, what kind of denizens. The reason for this is so that when they go to colonize, they can colonize the planet with as little disruption as they can get away with. It's not like in the science fiction movies where they go in and try and start terraforming right away. They just don't do that. Okay, they literally are spending most of their time doing the research to find places that are compatible with colonization. Now, of course, when you're looking at the colonizing part of it, we're dealing with people that are settling in to set up a civilization, not to replace one. Okay, and this is why when people are talking to me, and I've even had some of the big names in ufology talk about these people, these off-worlders getting ready to invade or to colonize. And I'm telling you, this is not happening. You don't have to take my word for it. Just take a look outside. Okay, our world has not been straightened out. There aren't a whole bunch of people walking around that are 8'4" and armored to the gills. We are not looking at these things. When you're looking at research, you're looking at coming in, yes, picking, as people call it, abducting people, taking fluids, taking skin samples, putting trackers on them. Now, let me ask you this, okay? When you consider what humans are doing to animals, animals, birds, fish, when you consider that, okay, are not humans doing that to residents of their own planet, never mind another one? We got to realize that the big problem with the abductions, and don't get me wrong, been there, done that. Not a fan of abductions. Much happier with contact. Okay, but what we've got to realize is that the research has to continue because you cannot advance if you don't push your limits. So absolutely, I encourage people to push your own limits. Figure out what your abilities are, figure out what your limits are, and then make the gamble, take the effort and push them a little further. Now, of course, remember, if you do have questions, absolutely drop a question into the chat room in all caps so I can find the thing. Okay, I will do my best to give you an honest answer. Now, I don't have a problem with the honest side. I have a problem with whether you're going to like the answer. We got anything going on here? No. Now, one of the neat little things we got to look at when we're looking at coming here for research, they will come in, they will do samples. And I mean, we're not talking about just picking up humans. They pick up cattle, they pick up plants, they pick up different animals and what have you, even mineral samples. Now, here's the neat part. There was a neat little rumor going on for the longest time. Maybe it's still going on. I don't know. I avoid mainstream for a reason. Okay, but I think on Terran, on the Terran table of elements, I think there are now 118 elements. I've seen a table of elements with over 250. Okay, now the thing is, I don't know, I am not a chemist. Okay, I am not into that side of it. So I can't tell you what's what. What I can tell you is that from the understanding I have, gold is not the best conductor. Okay, and maybe the scientists on Earth have figured something else out. Another one that works. But I can tell you this rumor that off-worlders came here and forced humans to mine for gold is absolutely bizarre. But when we're looking at colonization, we are looking at making certain they bring the equipment. Hate that. They bring the equipment to be able to handle Earth's atmosphere. Now, of course, when we take a look at some of the off-worlders, some cannot handle it. Like, for instance, you would never see a Pleiadian team come here for colonization because the atmosphere itself will kill them. Now, would they potentially come here and set up a research station somewhere remote? Certainly, but they will be totally equipped to keep themselves safe. Because don't forget, the other thing with Pleiadians, is they will not abduct people because of the fact that humans have the same problem with their atmosphere. Their atmosphere will wipe them out. It will wipe humans out. Now, the other thing with colonization is we take a look at what they're up to, and they do pick planets usually on the outer rim of their. Can we try English? Usually on the outer rim of their area, of their. I'm looking for the word. Of their field of influence, if you will. Okay, because what they're doing is because they keep getting new people applying to join the consortium. As the saying goes, safety in numbers, but much more importantly, when you're looking at people that are colonizing and you're reaching into new areas, a new member to the consortium brings a whole lot of new information. And again, you can get along with your neighbors no matter how far they are. I.e., if we're talking star systems apart, star systems are not that far apart if you happen to have a star drive. Okay. Now that said, you go back in the early days of Earth, and your settlements would only be a week away at most, right? Primarily because you didn't want to cover all that land. You didn't want to cover all that distance unprotected. Starships are the same way. But when they're looking at colonizing, they are not coming with the idea of conquering. Okay, and like I said, they will never set up on a planet that has an established civilization. Because according to them, the most technologically advanced surface dwelling species is the one that is the caretaker of the planet. Now, something we do have to realize. Humans understand technology as mechanical or artificial stuff. Off-worlders many times consider technology biological. They grow their buildings, depending on the species. Okay, and those are what they utilize because they come equipped with their own filtration system. You don't have to make sure it keeps running. But again, you are talking about people that are literally interested in colonizing, making this a new home. So why come in and destroy the thing? Okay. Now, oddly enough, colonization has the same kind of bearing as what buying a new business does. And so many people I've talked to, when they go to buy a business, they look at the business and go, "Oh, this looks like it's a great business. So let's change everything about it and then wonder why it falls apart." The other thing you got to remember about consortium colonization is they take a look at their own planet and go, "What are we doing wrong? Let's fix this." Then once they get their own world fixed, and they do it, they don't rely on somebody else. They certainly will get guidance from other people. Okay, but they will make certain their planet is running smoothly before they colonize. primary consideration there is if your homeworld isn't running smoothly, all you're going to do when you get to a new planet is replicate the same problem. And somehow that becomes a bit of an issue. So what we are looking at is colonization and planning on staying. Okay, now I've mentioned in some cases that we do have different alien races here, not the least of which is the Strazazians. Strazazians are a 7.5 to 8.5 foot reptilian that grow their own armor. Now, understanding that reptilian simply means they look like reptiles from Earth. Okay, that's why we call them reptilian. But what you got to realize is the fact they look like them does not necessarily mean they behave like them. So when these guys come in, there are settlements here, but they're not colonizing. They're here in order to protect mankind from some of the other species, not the least of which are the Tekleks. And yes, the Teklek, which is another reptilian race, came here originally when they first found out about Earth, or as they refer to it, they found out about Sol 4. They figured out one little detail. The minerals and the material and the raw materials that were available here were absolutely beautiful. So when they started their journey to get here, mankind was barely out of the caves. Okay, they were just an infant race. So they weren't even looked at as a dominant species. So Tekleks went, okay, there's where we desire to go. Okay, because they were going to strip the planet complete. Okay, now, unbeknownst to them, first and foremost, Earth, as we call it, is a Kaboran. Okay, and her name is Itza. But the Teklek didn't know she was here. Didn't know that's who she was. All they knew at their range was here was a planet that had a whole pile of good mineral. So they were planning on mining the thing. When they got here, they found mankind had evolved to a much more prolific number. Still not recognized in most cases as a technologically advanced civilization. They were still working with clubs. Okay. So when they got here, they went, hey, let's pick a couple of these up. Then they found they were actually tasty. And that became a problem. So now they've got a whole food source they're looking at. But the Strazazians found out what they were up to and went, this is not going to happen. And Christine, you have just come through the door. How you doing? Glad you could join us. So the Strazazians, because they are closer than Teklek, when they got wind that the Teklek were inbound, they raced in here in order to intercept. And fortunately for us, they managed to pull it off. So now what you're looking at is a simple situation where the Strazazians settled in, and in order to protect mankind, they did have to deal with them. But they trained for years to make sure they could handle humans. Because again, Strazazians weren't coming here to settle in. Because there's something you may not realize. With Strazazians, they come from a high-gravity planet. And if you come from a high-gravity planet, you're definitely going to be stronger, more resilient, this sort of thing. But here's the kicker. If you're on a low-gravity planet for too long, that kind of modification depletes itself. Now, don't take my word for it. Okay, you're going to have to do your own research, because I am no researcher to speak of. So the Strazazians, they come in cycles. They'll come in for a year or two, then they file out, and a replacement is sent in. In this way, they maintain their genetic integrity. Now, humans keep going, well, we've got to, it's really a question of we've got to take care of this. We've got to go to those planets. And yes, mankind has gotten off of Earth. They absolutely have. Now, I say absolutely because, well, I've been up there. Okay, you get to do with that what you will. There are so many people that I've heard, they go, well, how do you know? That's a long story and somebody else gets to prove it. Okay, I sit here questioning my own sanity half the time. But what I do know about colonization is if you're aiming to colonize a planet, you're not going into wanting to change the planet and the planet's ecology. Okay, and mankind has done that way, way, way too frequently. Donna C, how you doing? Glad you could join us. You know, the nice part about it, when we take a look at the whole concept of colonization and what that can do, on Earth, this is happening in every continent. If I recall correctly, Australia got hit really bad on Earth with the side effects of colonization without paying attention to what was going on. Okay, now picture what would happen if you take an econ off the reticular homeworld and release it on Earth. These things are voracious, but with no natural predator, and in this case without a lot of natural predators, they're going to overrun the planet in a heartbeat and then promptly starve to death. So we really have to look at this whole idea of, are we looking at colonization or are we looking at a situation of research where they come in, sit down in a place that is not right in the heart of a city? There have been exceptions. I remember Bud Hopkins wrote a book one day, I forget what it was called, where one of his patients was abducted off, if I recall correctly, the 12th floor of a New York apartment building. So it does happen, but it's not a common occurrence. And what we have to realize with this is when you're looking at off-worlders coming here for research, they're coming in much like humans go to different terrains for research. They come in to grab liquid, fluid samples, soil samples, plants, you name it. They take them back to their ship and then do their experiments. Okay, even with abductions. And the reticulans are very adept at this one. Reticulans come in, they will abduct a human. Okay, they absolutely take samples, put trackers on them, much like what humans do to other animals. It's just humans seem to get a little testy. In all fairness, I know for an absolute certainty, so do animals. It's just they don't speak English. You know, I remember years ago when I was still married to my first wife, we had a couple of dogs that were they were barking all the time. And my wife had gotten really mad about it and got really frustrated with them. So I come through the door and she's upset with them. I come through the door. I growled. I literally growled at the two of them. You know, growled at the two of them, barked a little. And my wife looks at me and she goes, when you're talking to the dogs, would you please speak English? I looked at her and I says, why? They don't. Off-worlders don't necessarily speak English. And if you're coming in, and this applies literally to people from this world as well, when you go to a new country, off-worlders, they learn the local language to the best of their ability or the local customs. So when they're doing research, they can interact properly. Okay. When you're looking at colonization, that's when you're moving into a place where your people are settling in and taking up residence in a non-occupied planet. Now, of course, we have that other neat little thing called invasion. This is when you go in en masse, with force, and take out the civilization so you can replace it. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean annihilation. Okay, many people, like the Moldok, okay, will go into a civilized area and they will enslave an entire people. Okay, and the Tormenon aren't much better. The Moldok are better at it. So we are looking at things that when you're talking about colonization, you got to realize these guys are not here to disrupt modern civilization because they don't colonize occupied planets. Now, I do get a kick out of it when I catch wind of something like I did the other day, where humans are looking at colonizing Mars. Now, this is a cute thought with two major problems. One, look what humans are doing to their own planet. Okay, they're not learning, at least not from what I'm seeing. Okay, if you go to another planet and you haven't learned how to run the one you're on, you're going to follow the same bad moves. Now, here's the other problem: the Martokian people, the ones that are actually on Mars. Okay, number one, they are not little green men. They're green, but they're not little. Okay, but they've already got a fully functional civilization. Okay, and it is completely underground. Now whether you believe me or not, that's your choice. Okay, I have to question it, so I figure you may as well. Now, I will tell you, man, from what I hear, mankind has found a planet that is a fair piece off, I don't know the distance, but that is very Earth-like and is about double the size of Earth. Okay, this sounds like a great place, except if you haven't got Earth itself straightened out, all you've got is a whole lot more area to continue screwing up. This may not be in your best interest. So I do encourage people to really work with each other in order to figure out how to get along, how to make the planet work. Because if we don't do this, we are going to run out of situations. You're going to run out of we'll try English. You're going to run out of resources. You're going to run out of room. And, this is just the reality behind it. The consortium is willing to convey these kinds of cautions. But mankind, first of all, has to develop a one world government. We talked about that a little while ago. So absolutely look it up in the prior podcasts I've done. I don't know if these are called podcasts or live streams or what the heck it is. This is my problem with tech. Okay, I don't even know the terminology half the time. But when we look at colonizing a place, you're looking at moving into an unoccupied place. Now, we are going to be talking about, where are we here? Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about Mobius, the Mobian homeworld. And, I sort of have to clarify something there. The Mobians literally come from Earth. Okay, 50,000 years ago, they colonized Mobius, which is in the same orbital cycle in our solar system as Earth is, but it's at 180 degrees to Earth. So from Earth, you will never see Mobius. Okay, but when they colonized it, it had no civilization on it, which is why they went there. Because they were just looking to expand. I mean, they already had a population of 10 billion people. Okay, and I mean, we're over 8 now. This is why they started looking to colonize. But they picked a planet that was uninhabited. I mean, yes, it had its own it had its own flora and fauna, but nothing had evolved to a dominant point. So, therefore, following consortium guidelines, it was safe to colonize. And that's what they did. They took their gear with them and settled in. Okay, pretty easy transition when you think about it. Not all colonization projects are the same. Okay, like you wouldn't want to try and colonize a planet with a baseline like Reticulum Prime. Okay, because Reticulum Prime has an interesting problem. the flora will eat you faster than the fauna will. So we are talking about when you're doing research, you want to disturb, you desire to disturb nothing. Take your samples, leave as little bit of a footprint as you can get away with, and carry on. Now, I've got to touch on something here about many of the people that are talking about research. Okay, about people coming back from the future. It's a great concept for science fiction, but it doesn't work in reality. Okay, they will research from the future, but not to change anything. Okay, more to the point, they look back to take a look at what civilizations in the past have done in order to avoid colonization complications. What did they do? What happened? Net result, they check themselves before moving into an area, even for research. They make sure that they've already checked the illnesses on the planet, as well as the illnesses they may be bringing with them. Okay, and yes, just so you're aware, this is just another one of those things I'm in the process of doing my best to document. I have let things slip for way too long. That's just the reality of it. So I finally got a schedule in place and got certain things moved out of the way so I can get these things sorted out. Much of it will be done in booklet form. Because I'll tell you, when I went and worked out the size of Races of the World's second edition, the size of it is staggering. Okay, I was not expecting it to be that size. Which is a bit of a problem, but I do desire all of the same races in. So it's going to be a little bigger. Well, no, it's going to be a lot bigger, as in something close to double the size. But when you're looking at colonization, you have to realize the races that are colonizing, they pick an undeveloped planet, do the research, make sure they're not going to kill it by their presence, and then come in and set up. Okay, then they let their civilization grow under its current path, because clearly, if you've already got a stable point. Samo, how you doing? Glad you could join us. If you've already got a stable one world government and it's working, transplant it, and now you can grow. This is the same idea as what humans use when you're looking at putting franchises together. Okay, one of the neat things with colonization is it opens up a whole new array for new experiences. But when you're looking at research, you're looking at coming in and making no mark, showing no sign you were there if you can avoid it. People colonizing are moving in, they're planning on dropping anchor and going, this is where we are. And now you can start building. Researchers are literally coming in to take samples, to pull up information, usually science. Okay, usually from a scientific standpoint. And, the reality is I look at some of the plans that people make, and I'm talking the professionals on this planet, and I'm looking at it going, how can you possibly overlook these clear complications? The idea that we are human and we will overcome everything is a cute thought. I encourage you to believe that. But for pity's sake, use your brains. Okay. Whoop. Oh, there we go. The neat part about it is both have their place and both are very viable. When we take a look at research, a lot of what I do when I'm talking to people, especially when I'm talking to off-worlders and ancient races, is I will talk to them to find out what they've done differently. And I'll tell you, some of the mistakes they made were pretty classic by human standard. Okay, when we look at the Sarkon are a prime example of people expanding too fast and having to cut back. You may find yourself looking at your own world, okay, that the situation is simple. You've overextended yourself, and you've got debts, you've got responsibilities you cannot match. Well, take a page out of the Sarkon book. Pull back what you're doing, okay, as much as you can. In the Sarkon's case, they colonized too far out and couldn't maintain supply lines. Okay, same problem happens with humans when you're looking at expanding things too fast. If you don't make sure the superstructure is in place, you're going to have problems. You know, one of the things that I know in Kelowna, where I am, they've been expanding so fast with the population, they don't have the infrastructure to handle it. And this is a problem. The Sarkon, when they had to cut back, what they did was they literally went, okay, we've got Sarkon outposts in all these places. They went to the outside places and went, look, we have to cut support. So they brought out all the tech they could to enable their outposts to continue on. Okay. And they gave them all the training, all the research they could handle, as well as stockpile what they could. They took a year to ship it all out there. The idea was simple. Ship everything out that you can and leave them with enough material so that will keep them for 10 years. But in that 10 years, those civilizations that were cut loose developed into the Tormenon, the Kamalian, and the Strazazians, all of which come from Sarkon descendancy. But it really boiled down to an issue of they had to be cut loose because the Sarkon Empire could not support them. And so instead of saying, no, we got to move y'all home, they went, okay, we are now colonizing the planet permanently, and we're going to turn around and let you sit there. They also told their own people, these 3 areas are being cut loose. If you desire to relocate to those locations, you're more than welcome to. And we'll even foot the bill for you. Okay, so they shipped out they added population, young and old alike. Some people that are old desire to relocate in order to basically wind down their twilight years, as it were. So what you end up with is a colonized an empire that left 3 groups of people behind, each of which evolved under their own guidance. Okay, and here we are today. They are still around. Mankind has the same capacity. Okay, but mankind's got to learn to get along first. Okay, and that's something that we seem to be having a little bit of trouble with. And this is why I keep doing this. Now, of course, we have already, as in my wife and I, along with input from Storm and LA, have already got a list of topics to run to the end of this year. Well, to the end of this year. 16th of September, the 16th of December will be our last show until the 2nd or 3rd of January. Okay, because, well, let's face it, we're going into Christmas. And I don't know about you, but my Christmas it's going to be quiet, but still important, at least to me. And many of you are going to be tied up with it anyway. In fairness, you probably won't be tied up with my Christmas. But when we look at colonizing, take a look at what's going on. In my case, I'm looking at Inner Voice Enterprises and taking a look at everything I've been doing and getting it rewired so that it will grow properly next year. Now, I'm quite happy to see us sitting at 700 subscribers right now. I still am looking at the numbers going, I look at the 700 and go, we are looking at something in the neighborhood of 42,000 people reaching easily. Okay, this is not a question of I'm looking at this going, oh, let's expand to the point that we've got all these people, let's make all sorts of neat little ideas. I'm looking at going, are you, as listeners, benefiting? Okay, I look at the whole idea of colonizing as reaching out into a new area. Okay, and making the most of it. Well, the same thing applies when we start looking at the new year, and we'll get to that in the next couple of days here. But when we take a look at the whole concept of the consortium, they go, okay, if you're going to colonize, do your research, make sure there's no civilization either above, on, or below the surface. Okay, because yes, there are civilizations that are built in the air, not the least of which are the Uka. Okay, but there are a number of races that are built in the air. There's a number that are built on the ground, and those that are built underground. Okay, now you can absolutely, without colonizing, you can absolutely turn around and set up a foothold or a settlement in an uninhabited part of a planet. Understand though, when you go in with that, the consortium looks at it and says, okay, you want to set up an outpost there so that you can gain a little bit better understanding of it. Be our guest, but do not try and overtake the current civilization. The consortium really frowns on that kind of invasion, or for that matter, any invasion. What do we got here? Did I miss anybody? Not by the look of it, but I probably did. I'm quite happy with what we got going on right now. And one of the things about colonizing is you're looking, they colonize in order to gain more room, yes. Okay, usually colonization happens much like when you watch bees. Okay, bees turn around and they get to a certain size of colony and they go, we're going to break off. Bees, ants, lots of insects do it. Okay, many other species do it as well. So what we're looking at is you can certainly set up a community inside, on an inhabited place. It's recommended because what they found was if an alien civilization sets up residence on an occupied planet, more often than not, and you have to play the odds really, but more often than not, what happens is the current residents panic, and all of a sudden you got a disaster on your hands. This was proven, and this was proven again. Well, again, it was thousands of years ago now, when the Atlanteans landed here. Okay, they say they ended up landing because they had to. Donna C, I wish I could give you a short answer. Okay, Donna C is asking who is in the consortium. Okay, and that said, there are, that I'm aware of, well over 2,500 member species. Now, of each of those species, there are many that have multiple races. The reticulans, for instance, are one race, or one species, but they have at least 15 races. Humans, I think, have something like 7 races. Okay, and humans are all human. Okay, I mean, yes, there are hybrids and what have you. That's another issue. But the consortium itself is a conglomeration of well over 2,500 species. Okay, and this is one of the things I'm mad at myself for, because I've already got over 120 documented, but because of problems in my own life, I really put things on hold. Well, didn't have a lot of options to. Samo, the short answer is only some of us. Okay, Samu is going, are we hybrids? And, the reality is, Samo, no. Some humans are hybrids, absolutely. Some humans are half-breeds. But, contrary to what one very well-known, I'm not going to tell you who it was, contrary to their statement, all hybrids do not know they are hybrids. But the massive majority of people that are on Earth, the massive majority of humans, are straight human. Okay, they are just human. So no, you don't have to worry about that. We are also not a bunch of clones. Bunch of clowns maybe, but not a bunch of clones. Now, that I've been asked before, Christine, and I'm going to have to leave it with the same answer I gave you before. Okay, I'm not about to answer that one. Okay, Christine's asking, am I a hybrid? I am, the best way I can put it is I'm an anomaly. Okay, but as for whether it's hybridized, somebody else can figure that out. I've done enough of the lab rat thing. I don't do that anymore. But I'm definitely a metabolic anomaly. Oh, where we are. Samuel's just saying there's millions of us that have, for example, a mole on our forearms, just below the elbow. It's on YouTube everywhere. It's so uncanny. We human, but we've been altered in some way to share the same traits. Well, here's the kicker, and I get flack for this one. Humans did evolve. Now, I will tell you, they were accelerated, but they are strictly, from my understanding, they are strictly Terran based. Oh, where we are. See, here's one thing you gotta be careful of, Samo, and this is a caution for everybody. Okay, and it's one of the reasons people have asked why do you get along with all these people? It's because I don't see myself as any better than anybody. Okay, quite the contrary, in all fairness. But the reality is, when we look at the hybridization program, humans are used for hybridization. And humans are way more adept in many cases of dealing with of raising a hybrid child than their other parent is, because unfortunately some of the other parents will take a look at the anomaly and go, not entirely mine, so I'm going to eat it. The neat part about it is that, from my standpoint, I look at the whole concept. When you're colonizing a planet, they do not hybridize the locals. They bring their own people in as purebreds and colonize from that standpoint. This is just the reality of the way their world works. Not to mention their guidelines. Now, where are we? Oh, really? Boy, we are really getting down there. But yeah, colonization is a matter of, okay, our planet is overtaxed. Now we got to find a new place. It's the same concept that Terran insects use, and many human civilizations. Community gets too big, and somebody says, no, I got to get someplace where it's a little more back to earth, a little more down to earth. Same idea. You get your frontiersmen, your pioneers that will go out to a new planet on their own and they will work through the hardships. And Samuel, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for that link. Whether I get to it or not is a debatable point, but I'm certain some people will. And LA, thank you. LA's letting us know we're down to 10 minutes. With this in mind, okay, number one, tomorrow, tomorrow is, what the heck is tomorrow? Tomorrow's Saturday. We will be looking at Mobius, the Mobian's homeworld. And that ought to be an interesting trip, considering Mobians were the Lemurians. Were the Lemurians that were here 50,000 years ago and transferred over. They colonized Mobius. Okay, and we'll go through how they went and did that. Then on Sunday, we are looking at the importance of gifting. Okay, I figure we are coming right into Christmas, so we'll look at what the importance of gifting is. Okay, plus on Monday, we are going to look at decommercializing Christmas. Just some ideas that I put in that I use myself. That I use myself to ensure we don't get caught up in that. Okay, and then on Tuesday, we tie the year off with Believe in Yourself. And we're going to get you set up so you can actually get ahead next year. Not a problem, Christine. I do my best with it. With coming on, and I have decided, quite often this works out to be really beneficial for me. Maybe that's a little selfish, but I am intending on increasing the content of the stream. But I'm certainly going to take care of what I have to here. Yeah, Samuel, I agree with you regarding the weekend, but my weekend is Wednesday and Thursday. Works out really well for me. One of the nice things about this world is we've got a lot of options. Now, that's what we've got coming up in the next few days. But that said, the first thing I do want to do, because we're just hitting the 5-minute mark here. Yeah, pretty close. What I do want to do is say thank you so very much for sharing your time with us tonight. Really appreciate it. I do look forward to the input from everybody, because it's through that input that I can find out what people are seeking. I am not the most, shall we say, energetic or the funniest person on the planet. And I certainly don't do the tech thing. Okay, but I do want to say thanks so much for sharing your time with us. Really appreciate it. We will be back again tomorrow, 8 p.m. Pacific. Okay, but until then, do take care of yourselves. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.